Today, I want to talk about something that is very, very important and often very sensitive. When sadness becomes something more, and it is really important in the transition through perimenopause and into menopause that we recognize our mental health and we take as good care of that as we do with any physical part of our body, because mental health is also hugely impacted around this transition time, due in large part, which I will tell you, with the estrogen and progesterone and the hormones that are really recalibrating as our body transitions through this period. So just before we begin, I just wanted to make sure that anything that you hear here is based on research. I'll show you the research papers at the end of this presentation. But if you're concerned in any way, shape, or form, please go and get adequate support for yourself. That could look like a GP appointment, that could look like an emergency department. It may even be just reaching out to Lifeline or Beyond Blue, something like that, or contacting your naturopath, nutritionist, some healthcare professional who can support you to the next right indicated thing. So I get a lot of women saying, I just don't feel like myself anymore. They're crying more than usual. Everything seems like an effort. They've got brain fog, they've got mood changes, they get snappy, they get weepy. It's just not who they used to be. And it feels like you might be the only one going through this. And I need to let you know right now that you are not alone. This is unfortunately more common than not. And it is incredibly important that you understand this process and that you recognize it in yourself and that you get support for yourself because it is available. So I love this idea. It's not just in your head, it is your head. It is your neurotransmitters. Yes, they are out of balance because they follow your hormones. And at this time through perimenopause and into the early stages of menopause, you are having often wildly fluctuating hormonal cycles, potentially in a day. It can be really incredibly volatile. And if you, it doesn't necessarily change how you feel, but it gives you the understanding that this is happening around, it's happening inside you, but it's not you going mad. And the really important part to recall is that if we can support your body to smooth out these really volatile ups and downs, then we can make a difference. And you can see here that estrogen has a love affair with serotonin, and serotonin's our happy hormone. And certainly you'll find that as your estrogen declines, so does the serotonin. It also really intricately linked to dopamine, which is our pleasure hormone, and our and motivation. And so often you'll find, a loss of joy in life, not wanting to do what you normally used to do, and really finding just life very, very difficult. And on top of that, put in stress and our stress hormones, cortisol, and in this case, norepinephrine or epinephrine or adrenaline. And these are in response to the stresses in our life. Now, stress in the life of a menopausal woman might just be that you've had a really bad night's sleep. That is incredibly stressful to the body. Not having enough calories in a day, going for longer than 3 or 4 hours without eating, having really destabilized blood glucose levels. And then that's just got nothing to do with the stress at work, the stress at home, the stress of the family, all of the other lifestyle and environmental stresses that we also have. So you can see how it can become this perfect storm in this time with these transitioning hormones and transitioning neurotransmitters. And you can see here, there's a couple of studies there, but and they're older. But a diagram I really liked was looking at this pre-menopause, well, pre-perimenopause it's kind of like your 20s and your 30s. You're kind of just ticking along, and maybe you're not ticking along. Maybe you've got daughters at the moment who are finding menstrual difficulties with PMS, PMDD, endometriosis, polycystic ovary disease, other issues with their menstrual cycles. And this, I said last week when I was looking at anxiety, can predispose us in our perimenopausal and menopausal years to be more vulnerable to mood fluctuations. So it's something to get on top of, even, you know, in the early years. But perimenopause usually starts in the 40s and often mid 40s to late 40s. And if your menstrual cycle is going along regularly and it's not causing you any distress and you're not noticing any wild fluctuations in your mood or your um, in your weight gain or anything like that, then maybe that's just you're all right. You're going you're cruising at the moment. And when perimenopause will start, it depends on how wildly those estrogen and progesterone and other hormones fluctuate as to how severe those symptoms might be that you'd experience. And this can be genetics. So you can have a look at your mum and your grandmum and maybe, aunts and there's those people that might be able to say, this is what my experience was. And you can glean a little bit of information from them. But there really is a window of vulnerability in this area, in this time frame, whereby, we need to take more care of our health rather than less at this time to try and smooth over some of the very wild fluctuations. And you can see here the study in 2024 done, and it looked at premenopausal women, and it found a 40% increase in depression and mood issues with women who have they didn't do anything else other than go into perimenopause. So that's why I'm trying to say you are not alone. Nearly half the population of perimenopausal or menopausal women are noticing some kind of mood issue with this transition. There was a prospective study done on about 16,000 women, which is a fairly large cohort. Like that's a fairly good sample. And the sample was taken worldwide. It wasn't just in one country, which is often, that could be pertinent to that country and not necessarily have relatable information for other countries. But in this one, it was done worldwide: USA, Australia, Netherlands, Switzerland, China, African American, Chinese, everywhere. So they did a huge sample, and they really found that the risk peaked in perimenopause, more so than menopause, towards, into middle menopause as an early stage in the first year or two, and then into middle of menopause and then late menopause, where the hormones are really kind of, grounded and everything's recalibrated and everything's your body is kind of set on its path again. But in that perimenopause and early menopause stage, there is this Harvard study here found twice as likely to have more depressive symptoms. So it's certainly a great many women that are involved in these really common difficulties. So menopause depression is under-recognized and poorly treated. That was an Australian study down in Monash, and I think it's worth pointing that out and really underlining this. It is under-recognized, and I think partly poorly treated comes from the confusion that it just is a mental health issue and not that it is a hormonal transition. So the cost of not doing anything is, many women leave the workforce. They just aren't able to continue in their roles. Their relationships are very strained. It's the highest divorce rate at this point in time. Lots and lots of difficulty maintaining relationships at this point. And as I said, poorer quality of life, um, just all over. It's really all encompassing. And so it's not okay anymore to sweep this under the carpet and pretend it's not there, or just to think that this too shall pass. And I guess it will, but it can take a long time to pass, and it can take a toll, a great toll before it does pass. So it's really important that we honor this process and we also know when it is something more. So, okay, what's the difference between perimenopause and depression? Well, depression is something, it's a next level. Um, it's persistent low mood. It's feeling so flat that I've had some women say to me, you know what, the house was burning down. I don't think I'd be bothered running out. Like it's not a suicide wish, although maybe it is, but it's about the fact that they just can't be bothered moving, even in an emergency. That's just not a priority. It's like it's an absence of feeling, if that makes sense, and no pleasure. Women start to withdraw. They don't do what they normally do. They're not going out with friends. They're avoiding social interaction. They are really trying to, well, I don't know if they're trying to isolate themselves, but they are isolating themselves. And in that way, that keeps a cycle, going. It is an exhaustion that a good night's sleep does not fix. Now, I know a lot of perimenopausal or menopausal women are not having good night's sleep, and that is a crucial piece of the puzzle for any good health, but particularly for mental health. So if your sleep disappears, get onto it. Get onto it fast, because there's a lot of things to be able to support you. And sleep for me is a non-negotiable. It really is not something that you can do without. Uh, the irritability and the rage. So depression often can be exhaustion, but it can also be really quick and explosive. So really important to know and see that trigger. There are a lot of cognitive changes in perimenopause and menopause, and the brain fog is what I hear a lot of women talking about. They go into meetings, they can't think of what they were going to say, they can't lead the meetings anymore, they're forgetting words, and that really impacts their self-confidence. And of course, they start withdrawing um, from meetings and they withdraw from their life. They stop showing up, if they will, if that makes sense. um, Hopelessness and not wanting to be here. So feelings of worthlessness and hopelessness. If this is you, then there certainly is help. You can see at the bottom of the screen, Beyond Blue Lifeline. It is incredibly important that you reach out and get help. And Lifeline is there 24 hours a day. I always say to people, they're sitting there waiting to take your call. So don't sit there and suffer. Make sure that you reach out 13, 11, 14. Alrighty, so how do we evaluate it? Well, the DSM-5, which is a book of mental health, will say that depression is something that's been going on for more than 2 weeks. It's affecting your work and your relationships and your ability to function. It's low mood most of the day on most days. It's reduced interest or pleasure. It's fatigue and loss of energy. It's difficulty concentrating, and it's feelings of worthlessness. So if you've got those sort of symptoms, I really encourage you to reach out to your GP. I think that would be the next right indicated step. And I often have women who have seen their GPs, and I most definitely will work in with them. I love co-managing with GPs and with clients who are finding life really difficult. And at that point in time, it may be medication that is the next right indicated step. And as I said, that is definitely a conversation to have with the GP. So why is it so often missed? I think it can be that sometimes with the patient not sure about what's going on, often they don't know what to tell the GP. And so I'm hoping that some of this might be interesting, or hopefully that it's giving you a good idea of what to say when you go and see a GP about how you are feeling. Often it can be, put down to hormones and just, oh, well, this will will go. I've seen women put on hormonal therapy that are still finding difficulty with mood. So it's not just medication and then you'll be right. It may be, and that's again a conversation for you and your GP, but it's certainly something that I work in with, and I love the multi modality approach. I think that can be enormously supportive. So 4 things you can do right now. Trust what you're experiencing. You're not dramatic, you're not weak. This is your body recalibrating. If you believe that it is something more, then it is absolutely imperative that you reach out and get help. Don't wait for it to get worse. And if you want more than one opinion, that is usually a really helpful idea. Getting a multimodality approach has been shown to work. CBT, mindfulness, many of the psychological strategies that I use in counseling, going alongside the dietary and lifestyle understanding that I have as a naturopath and a nutritionist, can really be a foundation for cognitive support and mood stabilization, absolutely, regardless of whether someone's on medication or not. I reiterate again, please reach out and get help. Initially, you might be Beyond Blue or Lifeline. They are there 24/7, so they are waiting for your call at any hour of the day or night. And here are some of the references that I used. I just thought I might show these to you. The 2024 papers, The Risk of Depression in Menopausal stages, so a systematic review and meta-analysis. So really looking at loads and loads of women to see that this is not something that's just happening to you. And the other 2024 paper is under-recognised and poorly treated, looking at menopausal depression in Australia and New Zealand particularly. You don't have to push through this alone. I would be most happy to hear from you if that's something that you feel like would be supportive. I do have a discovery call, so you're most welcome if you'd like a 15-minute call with me. No pressure, no sales, no obligation, just someone to sit and listen, and I will give you my honest understanding of what I think could be the most supportive thing for you right now. If you would also like to book a consultation, you're welcome. And if this is something that you think might be supportive for someone else, I'd love if you could share it with them as well. There's also a Thrive Through Menopause program I have on my website that might be supportive if you wanted to look at that as well. I'll look forward to seeing you next week when we will have another episode. Thank you.